Hello. Hope you guys are doing good. On my way to work this morning, I searched on YouTube for a video playlist to make you cry. I'm going to talk about the grief charge and what it means, and how that idea that grief is just a charge, an electrical charge, or a sort of emotional, unwanted emotion, misemotion. Some of these terms you get mixed up with Hubbard's idea of what a clear is and an OT, unaffected and unshakable and all this kind of shit. So I don't have the dictionary with me, so I can't give you the definition of a grief charge. So when you sit with the e-meter and you got the cans in your hand and you blow a grief charge and you're crying, it's grief. Maybe not grief, you may not cry. It may just be like sort of a swelling, sinking feeling in your guts. But everybody encounters grief in their life. Loss of loved ones, loss of friends. There's all kinds of causes of it. And I read an article after watching these videos, which were very, very moving. As we're all just human beings, As, I like those videos that sort of accentuate the human element, and that, or the caring, kind of like nature does sometimes. Human beings can be rather unnatural at times. And one of the things that there's acute grief, which if you read the article you'll see the definition of what it is, and there's prolonged grief. And it's likely that we all experience both at some point. I've had some prolonged grief in the subject of my biological father, because of the disconnection that happened as a result of me being involved in Scientology. And one of the ways that I keep his memory alive and keep that, well, I make an effort to keep that memory alive, I'll say that, to connect with those memories that I do have. And because it's a prolonged grief thing for me. There's probably other prolonged grief things for me and everybody else, but to connect with those people or feelings, is a way for you to not let the grief live inside your mind as grief. In other words, when I connect with my dad and the memory of my dad over the years, it has become more of a positive thing, a net positive thing. It's taken years, and first it was really difficult because I still, believed that he was an SP and all this shit. But when I started to make those connections, or make that effort to make a bond with him when he's not here, making a connection with the memories, and when I encounter that deep grief or the prolonged grief that comes up time after time, regret, it's slowly becoming easier, and not just easier, but fulfilling to keep his memory alive. So when I read this article, it was nice to know, because the therapy that I've had apparently has been working. Haven't been in therapy for about a year now, but there's a list of some things I'll go over real quick about getting to that point to where you can connect with the grief, and maybe even before you're able to connect with the grief, some of these points need to be addressed. Health and exercise, diet, being able to sleep. I had to wear myself out to go to sleep when I started getting back to a regular sleep schedule. But I get up every morning and I go to bed every night. I don't have any trouble going to sleep. Exercise, I limited to what I can do, but I stretch, and I am gaining muscle mass back. Diet, I could probably do better on that, but I eat 3 times a day. Another point is finding meaning in it. And this is a psychologically proven thing. So when someone dies, or you have a major loss, or there's a traumatic experience, finding meaning in it can be very beneficial. And you may like or not, but all religious philosophies have in them ways of deriving meaning out of life. This video is not about the finding meaning in grief through Scientology's grief charge, which in my opinion is a very negative reinforcer, because it's it's an electrical charge is basically what it's saying. It's just a charge and you need to get rid of it. But it's not, because if you eliminate that grief charge, if you're believing that you're eliminating this grief charge and that it's gone and discharged like from an axon to a terminal, like and then it's gone, or a positive to a negative, zap, and then the charge is gone, then you are severing any connection to the memory, or you are, in Scientology speak, not ising it. Personally, I not ised many life traumas, many grief, prolonged grief experiences, and I think that is a big part of why I bought into it so hard, because the idea that grief is a charge, and that if I can blow it, in other words, get rid of it or discharge it, then I will no longer have to worry about it. And it brought about a state of sort of alienation, social alienation, emotional distance, and emotional disconnection from people. And well, disconnection from my own emotions, so deriving meaning, like, so what do you do if you've got a grief charge and you're thinking about it as a grief charge, and you've done that for years and years and years as a Scientologist? Well, that's the tough part, because you have to derive some meaning that's not a grief charge, which means you have to reconnect with some old stuff on a fairly regular basis. And that can be hard. I'll be honest, it can be hard. You don't want to face it because you feel like I blew that grief charge. So deriving the meaning for me came in the way of studying some philosophies I've never studied before, studying more psychology. I studied psychology before Scientology, and I studied after Scientology, and revisiting some of the Psalms and Proverbs and the Four Gospels and St. Thomas Aquinas and Nietzsche and Plato and Aristotle, and just Patanjali, William Thoreau, Wayne Dyer, Alan Watts, just whatever I could find that I felt would help me reconnect to myself. And that's finding the meaning. That could be something different for someone else. Honoring, another point is honoring the loss. When I hear that, like honoring your feelings or honoring the loss, or when I hear honoring the loss, I feel like to me, it means honoring my feelings. This morning, I cried a lot. I cried the whole way to work, and when I got to work, I cried in my car for about 10, 15 minutes straight. My sinuses are probably pretty cleared up now. Because I thought I was talking, I was like this. You know what I'm talking about, when you cry and you just get all stopped up. I have a tendency, others may as well, but to hold on to some grief until I feel safe enough and in a place where it's not going to disrupt my life. Like, for instance, if I go home and have dinner with my folks and I just start bawling, they're going to want to know what's wrong. But really, I'm the only person that can make those connections. And it's, I don't have that kind of it may sound weird, but I don't have that kind of connection with everybody. So I make that connection with myself when I can. And that goes to the fourth little thing here: time for loss and time for life. So, in the past few months, some major things have happened that, in addition to my prolonged grief, there's been acute, grief, and when those things stack on top of the regular grief that I have on a prolonged basis that is gradually getting better, I start to feel really overwhelmed. But the problem is I got to find a time and a place to do it. So that may work for some people. That may work not so well for some people. There's another point on here that kind of is almost like a repeat of the other: honoring loss. Don't judge your feelings. That to me is just part of initiating the grieving process, like initiating like a nice, good, long cry where you just let go and you're not judging yourself for crying. And the more you can let go, for me, the more isolated I am in a way from someone, unless they're close to me and they understand, and they know what I'm crying about, I'll do it myself, because I don't, that's a tough one. Don't judge your feelings, because when most of the time I'm okay. I have good coping skills, but for me to just snap and start, crying and grieving all over the place, I judge myself, because for better or for worse, there's, the people that I care about, I don't want them to worry about me. So I would judge myself for crying and grieving in front of them. Now, that doesn't happen so much at funerals or stuff like that. I'm pretty open with my feelings on that. But when it comes to like my history and the prolonged grief, there's just, not many people, not even my closest family, my mother and my father, my stepfather, Cowboy, know how I feel. They've got their own grieving process that they go through. And then coping, which is what the psychologists and therapists that I went to in the last 2-3 years told me that is my most prominent skill in dealing with this prolonged grief and trauma. The way that I cope is similar to what I just described. If I have a lot of grief, I can, and don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean I'm sunshine and rainbows to be around. Yesterday, while I was working, I was just kind of, two sheets to the wind, a little zombified, and but there were some customers that kind of pulled me out of my funk at the end of the day, and I went and saw an old friend, and so that grief, this morning I just it was really dark clouds in the sky in this morning, like a very large thunderstorm system that was just looking pretty menacing. And I don't know why, but that I went and had coffee with my folks, and on my way to work I just Googled that video playlist and cried my eyes out all the way here. And it was the right time to do it, So I just wanted to share that, and then I'll put the link to the page about grief on I think it's Psychology Today. It's a good read, and talks about a lot more than what I've talked about, especially with the basic coping skills. And I have yet to read that myself. I'm curious to see what coping skills are there that they recommend and what coping skills I've developed over time, because I've never really looked at coping skills. I just have coped. So the grief charge is, if you're an ex-Scientologist, whether you're staff member, public, or SO, I would encourage you to look at this article and maybe consider some of the prolonged grief that, even though you're out now and you're processing things differently and you don't think like a Scientologist anymore, there's lots of little hooks and stuff in the tech. So there could be some prolonged grief or some acute grief that would be beneficial for you to experience. Because at the end of the day, you're wanting to take that grief, and it may last, the loss of a dear loved one, that grief, prolonged grief, can last the rest of your life. But if you take the time to connect with the memories of the loss, it's almost like you're bonding and creating a new relationship in your mind. And when you think about it again, you want a net positive reaction instead of a net negative grief